Well, hi everyone, and welcome to this show that has yet to be named. But it's us. It's me and Tamlyn Tomita and Kelly Hu. We're starting this whole project where we're going to chat about all sorts of issues and topics that we care about. But yes, we're still trying to come up with a really solid title, right? So
yes.
Hey,
But we
ladies.
will.
Yes, we will. It has to be very clever. It's got to be very fitting for what
There's
we're
lots of options
all
in the
about.
mix, and we're going to do our best to
Exactly.
figure out the one
Whittle
that
it down.
Yeah.
Anyway, so how's everyone doing? How are you, ladies?
Awesome. It's
Yeah.
been good,
Yeah.
right?
Good. Well,
Tamlyn?
Happy autumnal
Joy
equinox.
luck,
Happy. Yeah, the change of
Happy.
seasons is upon us,
Yep.
and getting back to gathering together again, and especially for the upcoming holidays, is always a joyful thing. So I think we're all looking forward to that.
Yeah, for
Tamlyn,
sure.
you keep saying joy.
Joy. What does that mean?
Love.
Joy. Happy
Tamlyn.
joy.
Tamlyn.
Tamlyn.
What?
The world
What?
wants to know.
The world wants to know.
Okay,
The
because
world wants to
guess
know.
what? Wow, let's inform people why we're like just talking about this.
So we're super excited about a certain story that is looking towards a sequel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
the
Joy Luck Club.
The bottom line is can't talk, won't talk, because there's been no talk. Quite frankly, I'm very, very excited at hearing that there's been an announcement that Amy Tan and Ron Bass have teamed up again to collaborate on Joy Luck Club 2, the working title. That seems to be the theme nowadays. But and in association with a production company and another writer. But
So it's not Janet Yang's production company.
From what I understand, and I have not communicated with Janet, nor have I communicated with Ming and Roz and Lauren.
No,
or any of the mothers.
Wait,
so
okay.
yeah, I think it's just in the beginning process.
Okay, but
and
wait a minute.
everybody's super
Tam,
excited. Yeah.
I mean, when this news broke, the
I
media
know.
was all over it, right? It was all over the media, and people were
Right.
freaking out, including myself.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, understandably, sure.
understandably, because it's such exciting news. But you're trying to tell us that you have not gotten word at all about this.
Yes, I to this day, October 17th, 2022, I have not heard anything. There's always been inklings, but no official word and no official dialogue. But that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It just has not happened as of yet. So there's always the open door, coming in and out. So I think it's just the excitement that the team who's heading this project are really excited and really trying to gauge the interest and gauge the excitement.
God. I mean,
to a project like this.
I think
for them and good luck.
Yeah, I think the excitement is there clearly by
for sure.
how people
for sure.
reacted to this news. So let's hope it happens. But I think it's so weird that you did not get a heads up at all before this story dropped.
I know. Well, again, I think the thing with the success of Shang-Chi, Crazy Rich Asians, the whole plethora of Asian and Asian American stories that are on television and in film, it's proved to the Hollywood machine that our stories can generate money and can generate a lot of interest. So I think it was just testing the waters and to prove to investors, I think that this will gain a lot of interest, gain a lot of traction, and put a lot of money into people's pockets who are willing to invest in that kind of story. So all good all around. I just hope that Amy and Ron have that kind of freedom and that kind of grace to be able to create the story that is worthy of all the characters that everybody around the world has fallen in love with. So just crossing fingers for those two, the god and goddess. Well, actually, the goddess supreme, Amy is the supreme goddess to create this universe, what we know as Joy Luck.
Yeah, and the fact that she's involved, that's a very good sign.
Yes.
I mean, and we should
Yes,
tell everyone,
absolutely.
just in case people are out there who don't know what we're talking about. The sequel, apparently, according to all this media, is going to continue the story of the mothers and the daughters. And of course, Tam, you played one of the daughters, and now you
Mhm.
guys will be mothers with children, and so it's like going to continue
Right.
the generational stories of these
Right.
women that we fell in love with, in the book and the movie,
Right.
right? So, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
it screams sequel. So, I think we're all so excited. I mean, let's hope
Yeah,
that this is all true.
it should be fun. I mean, just as a fan, and knowing that you two are fans as well as I am, is like, oh my God, what happens to? Because I think we were introduced to Waverly's daughter Shoshana playing at the piano,
Oh,
and
right.
I don't remember if Rose, played by Rosalind Chow, had children because we don't see them. I thought they were mentioned. And of course, June Ming Na is not married yet, and
Right.
I assume she didn't have kids. And Lena by Lauren Tom, I don't think her character had any children in the book or in the film as well. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Oh,
Yeah,
lots
yeah,
of material to work with. But well, speaking
yeah,
of, I
absolutely.
mean, we'll stay tuned for more news from that, of course. But so speaking of
Yes.
Asians in Hollywood and sort of,
Hmm.
breaking through that ceiling and, making money, and Crazy Rich Asians, obviously in 2018 was a breakthrough movie in that way. And the star of that movie, Constance Wu, has been in the news a lot lately because of what happened to her, apparently, according to her new book that's come out, um,
Hmm.
while she was on Fresh Off the Boat, right? She is claiming that she was sexually harassed by an executive producer or one of the top producers on the show. And so when the show was renewed for a sixth season, she put out a tweet that said, she displayed her dismay over the fact that it was
Hmm.
renewed, and she got a lot of flack for that, a lot of criticism. And she writes in this book that she became suicidal because a particular actress, an Asian American actress, wrote to her and said, "You are a blight on the Asian American community," and she got canceled. Let's be honest, right? She got canceled for what she said. She was called a brat, ungrateful, a disgrace, and on and on and on. So, she,
Just to be clear, I don't even have Constance's phone number.
so was it you? Okay. And I'm not an actress, so I'm not the one either.
Tamlyn?
No, not. I have
Nope.
no info on her. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
We none of us really know her.
No, we
Yeah.
don't. So we're speaking in terms of what we're hearing, seeing, reading,
Yes, yes.
watching, and I've watched a lot of the interviews that she's been on now because of this book tour. She's been doing the rounds, big
Yes.
time, right? Red Table
Yes.
Talk, all the nightly, the evening shows and the morning shows, and I mean, everything in between. So she's being heard and seen now.
Hmm.
But there's apparently still a split in terms of how people feel about this and her. Um, Wondering what
Yeah.
you guys
I
think.
I wanna stand by my sister, right? And I
Hmm.
want to believe that what she is saying is true. I mean, I don't want to believe because it's a really crappy place to be.
Oh, yeah.
But I, I want to be able to believe her. But every single interview that I've seen her in makes me doubt it. She
Why?
cries, for one thing, in every interview,
At the same
right? She
place.
cries every time she talks about it.
Yeah.
And I get she's a very emotional person and she keeps describing herself as emotional,
Yeah.
right? Which also makes me then think, then is she just getting over emotional about other things too? Or is it do we allow her to just be emotional and not and to give her that grace? I'm really kind of split on this. It's hard for me to believe her 100% without thinking, is she just exaggerating?
Is it because,
Or
Kelly, do you not believe everything, or is it some aspect of what she's saying that you don't believe? Like, for instance, let's break it down. the accusations of sexual harassment. Do you believe that part?
Well, okay, there's that part where she mentions how he touches her leg and then goes up her leg and ends up touching her crotch, right?
Yeah.
That is inexcusable. That is not something that can be even like, imagined.
Justified. No, of course not.
Right? Or justified, right?
No.
But the things like, calling her after hours to ask her to send a selfie, she didn't say a naked selfie. She didn't say, something that was topless or inappropriate. A lot of times you get these rush things. I've been asked to send selfies about my hair because they want to see how long my hair is, my hair color, or whatever. I don't know.
It's interesting because she's implying that they were inappropriate, right?
She's implying, but she didn't say exactly.
She isn't. I mean, I don't know if she's more explicit in her book, but in all her interviews, she's definitely not.
Right.
I mean, Tamlyn,
again, I think I need to ask both you and May. Did you get a chance to read the book yet, or are we watching the interviews? Because I got to see the Red Table Talk.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen the other plethora of interviews because she's coming out with a book. But I do believe her in her telling of the story and from her perspective. The other, I guess, bit of information that I think all three of us know is that there's been a Twitter discussion, which is always not the great place to have a discussion between her and Jeff Yang.
Yes.
Who's the father of Hudson Yang, who plays the character Eddie on Fresh Off the Boat. So that's another complication, right? A complex layer.
She accuses him of not backing her, right? She accuses Jeff of not backing her, saying that, she told him about it in season 2. He thought it was season 5, which was after the Me Too movement. And she's saying it was before the Me Too movement. And so that's why she couldn't really speak out. She didn't feel that there was a platform or people would believe her.
Or she would be the
out about it.
Right.
Exactly.
And he did admit
that Twitter conversation.
And he did admit through this Twitter conversation that he does remember her coming to him and telling him about this incident,
right?
The sexual harassment,
and that he didn't say anything,
and that just a mention, though, not like she told him exactly what was going on.
Right.
It was just a mention in the makeup room in one line, and he didn't pursue it,
right?
Because he figured that she would tell him if she was comfortable with it,
right?
And she didn't elaborate on it either. So it was
here's
just
the thing.
One line.
So it's hindsight is 2020. This is a perfect case of this, where Jeff says in his response, should I have encouraged her to tell somebody and report it, or was I too afraid that it was not my place? And also because I was fearful for my own son, because he was on the show.
Yeah,
and all of these things that, a normal person would actually go through, that would be the thought process, right? Because there's so much involved. And then if it was just a mention, he's probably thinking, well, is this my place? Is it not? Is it my business? Is it not? Oh, what about my son? I have to think about his welfare, all of those things. So that was an interesting exchange. But I think the bigger question to ask both of you, and I'm really curious what you think, she's mentioned in every interview that she felt like the entire AAPI community turned its back on her, right? So it was like a me against them kind of situation.
Okay,
She's said that many times.
No. Yeah, that's right. I remember. And it's like, what do we need to... So and again,
feels like she was canceled.
I know that the three of us do not represent the entire AAPI community, but I'm curious as to what kind of response there would she have liked, would she have expected, which are two different things, and how can we support her in this battle, because it is a claim that she was sexually harassed, and I think there is some credence that it needs to be investigated or that needs to be researched. I don't know what the correct legal term is. But for Jeff to be in discussion with her on a public platform like Twitter is great, and it's important because I think he's putting her viewpoint up on that platform and saying, I need to stand as, because this is the last thing I read, that he needs to be silent and just support her in whatever way she needs, which I find is fine. But then again, in understanding what she is again, it's like, we're not perfect and we're not a monolith.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, we were only working with whatever information we had, right? It wasn't until just now in her book that she's come out with this accusations of, misconduct, right? So of course, the information that we had is that she's just not happy about season 6. But as an actress, okay, coming from an actor's point of view, I understand what it is to be unhappy in the most successful part of your career. I don't know if you experience this, Tamlyn, but for me, my most unhappy moments of my life were when my career was at its best, supposedly, right? At its best. And it was very lonely and isolating because you are surrounded with all these people who are like your yes people. You never know if you're getting real advice or you're being manipulated into things. It's a very difficult place to be, and I understand, especially if you're emotional, like she keeps saying she is.
Right.
It can be really just taxing.
A mind fuck.
Yeah.
It's a mind fuck.
Well, and also you may feel trapped, right? Because you want to move forward, you want to maybe do the next project that you're looking forward to, and that was her situation,
and that
apparently.
Was her thing too, right?
That she had
and
other things. I get that too.
Like you are trapped in this place that you don't want to be in. Like you're over it, right? Yeah. She had all these other great things that had already come out, like that movie with J-Lo and the Crazy Rich Asians. Like she had a huge career boost, right? Coming out, that she was being held back from another year of this show she didn't want to be on.
Right.
So I understand where that comes from as well.
Fair point.
So yes, she sounds like a brat, but from an actress point of view, like,
listen, I mean, it's not even acting. I was at the top of my game when I was a CNN anchor, right? And I was not happy after a few years of being in that position. And I was in Hong Kong at the time, and I really wanted to leave. People thought I was crazy to leave that job and not be happy. I should be grateful and, just like hang on to, but I didn't, and I left.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it's a testament to what the value is of our health, because, for her to be so, again, because I think the three of us did not reach our apex of success, or apex and apex. Because she was in the middle of social media.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that I think I can say, nope, I never bore the brunt of that, deluge of vitriol and unadulterated hate. So for that
cancel culture, there was no cancel culture.
On her soul, I have to say, it extracted a price out of her. And for her to advocate for mental health, that she's seeing a therapist, and a psychiatrist, as often as she needs to self-care, which is something that we're constantly talking about right now. That's what I'd like for every one of us to take away, hearing her story, that if something happens in your life that is harassment, that's abuse, that we could have the bravery, if not just the courage to say no and to seek help in the aftermath, because I think that's the most important thing.
No, kudos.
It's like getting the guy. I don't care. I don't know who it is, but I'm having inklings, and I really don't.
I think we all know who it is.
I'm not sure. We'll talk after it. But again, it's for her to take the high road and say it's about mental health, and that's what I'm coming. That's what I'm coming away with.
Absolutely, kudos to her for using this moment to focus
and
put a spotlight.
You're off camera again, May.
Am I?
Oh, I see her.
No, I'm still here. Really?
As long as the feed is okay.
No,
okay.
I see all of us, so that's weird.
Okay.
Anyway,
the master.
Kudos to her. Kudos to her for using her platform and using this moment to spotlight mental health. I think that's a huge thing. What I'm also hearing, though, from others is that she's taking advantage of the situation. She's trying to get back into everyone's graces. So she's using this, this story as something to elevate her identity.
The context is, reality is that she has a book out.
Yeah.
She's also opening a play in LA.
And she's got a movie out.
And I think she's got 2 TV projects. So attention, PR, publicity is publicity. So
yeah,
good for her on.
Wait, I didn't realize she's also got a play coming out. That is very
I think it's called Ghost
risky
Story. I think it's opening up.
I would be so afraid of a negative people in the audience.
Oh gosh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and she is really exposed in that way.
Well, she's pretty exposed now, period.
Because
of what she's saying.
Yeah. But she, in a way, we're all, like we can't really affect her directly. But if somebody's in a theater and they want to shout something,
that's true.
Right.
No, absolutely. Well, now
you're such an auntie. You're such an auntie. You're so taking care of her already. I know.
That's funny.
I know.
All right, let me ask you, ladies, this then, because this is what else I'm hearing is that people in the AAPI community are, what she's saying. And I have to say, I paused when she said this about the AAPI community, how we're still expected to be perfect and we can't be critical and we can't, kind of go against the grain and, all of that because we're still trying to fight for our cause and show solidarity. So therefore, even if there's flaws or a mistake or something that's negative, we can't talk about it. We can't shed light on it. We can't criticize. And we're just perpetuating that idea of, Asians just, have to stick together and not make any noise. That's sort of something.
I think I know Kelly Hu pretty well to say that she's not going to be quiet.
Well, all of us, the 3 of us are perfect examples of that, right?
None of us hold our tongues.
Yeah.
God knows I've said a lot of things I regretted in my life, but I feel like we have been supportive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we are not perfect. But yes, and we are sort of still in our infancy.
Yeah.
But I feel like I feel like we do speak our minds still.
Yeah, I think she's pigeonholed.
Maybe she felt personally trapped. And that's where it's coming from, right? Where she felt like because she represented so many Asian Americans, right? And so much of the success of our, places in this business, she felt that she sort of represented.
Yes, I think that's what she was saying.
And that's the trap, right?
Yeah.
That's the trap that we feel, but that we put on ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we have to understand that we are still individuals.
Absolutely.
And we have to, fight for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe some of it is true to a certain extent, but that is really something that I think she maybe have put on herself more than anything.
Yeah, I think there's the expectations that that there's a voice of the AAPI community and that speaks for all. And I think going through all 3 of our experiences is like, I know that we go out representing AAPI community, but we are not the voice of the AAPI community so for any of us, for me to say, go Constance Wu, it's like, the idea is that I have to, to publicly state that I believe her, but we need to get down to the root of the story. And what is she, what does she really want? And who is she accusing that the AAPI community has been silent? Because there are issues that we have not been silent on. Stop AAPI hate.
Right.
Anti-hate.
She's saying about her specifically.
About her specifically. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because also her accusation was against another Asian American who is successful in the business.
Yeah.
So that's why she's saying nobody came out to talk about me because, we didn't want to put a stain on the Asian community.
Right. And the progress. Right. And what this person, this producer apparently is somebody who's done a lot for the community and, in Hollywood and beyond. And so she felt like she was powerless to say anything because it would ruin the progress that we were making. That
Yes.
part, I kind of feel badly for her.
It.
I do.
Yeah.
If that's indeed the case, yeah, she probably felt like if she did accuse him openly and publicly at the time, it would ruin a lot of the work that was being done at the time.
The future, yes.
Here's the thing also, is that all of us, before any of this happened, we all heard rumors about how difficult she was, right? How difficult she was to work with, about how, and even she admits it. She got this reputation of being difficult to work with because she like stood her ground and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, I heard, things, but I'm sure people have said that about me too. I know for sure that I have been told by directors, and I don't know if this was just a form of manipulation, that, you have a reputation of being difficult to work with. And I'm like, wait, what?
Really?
Yeah, maybe there was a time in my life where I was difficult on set or whatever.
Really,
because
Kelly.
of something that I stood for or whatever. I don't know where that comes from, but that was the implication, right? When it came about, that was the rumor about her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was that she was difficult to work with, and that, and so when these accusations came out, or when she made this post on Twitter, people were like, oh, there she is being difficult, right?
It was fed into that.
Yeah. It was an immediate reaction, I think. Yeah, based on
I know that about what I heard. I never had any kind of exchange with her. I don't know anything about her personally, but I do know that I had a friend that was up for being an assistant to her, working for her, and he asked me about her, and I was like, well, I don't know her personally, but this is what I've been told, that she was difficult and, just be careful, blah, blah, blah. He took the job and he said she was amazing. She was the nicest person. And he's like, Kels, you would be best friends with her.
See?
So,
with
that in mind,
yeah,
you cannot believe everything you hear either.
Yeah. Oh, no. And you know why? And so here's the thing. This is what I'd like to say. If you're watching by any chance, or somebody sends this show to you, I invite you to come talk to us. I think it would be an amazing experience for 4 empowered, confident Asian women to have a discussion about exactly what we're talking about. Because I think Asian women in particular were put in between a rock and a hard place oftentimes.
Yeah.
We can't be too strong.
And I think because she's a woman, that she's smart, that she's attractive, and she's successful, those are actually 4 strikes against her.
Completely.
That's why, things, that reputation of her being a difficult one, that Kelly's a difficult one, that Tamlyn, that May's a difficult one, keeps circulating, because we have 4 attributes that people strive for, and we were able to attain.
But so remember, Tamlyn,
yeah, I absolutely,
4 attributes that though don't go with Asian females, that aren't supposed to go with the Asian female package. Right. That's why it's even more difficult, right? Yeah. I was listening to Mindy Kaling on Meghan Markle's podcast, Archetypes, and there was a line that she said that I had to write down, which is, I'm going to look it up right now because I can't remember it, of course, because I don't want to misquote her. A woman who isn't apologizing for herself makes people uncomfortable. Is that brilliant? It's brilliant. Because women were programmed to say, oh, I'm sorry. Can I just ask you? Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, fuck that, right? And Mindy Kaling called it out. She's like, this is why women like me, people kind of think, have these thoughts that aren't positive.
Right? She's a bitch.
Yeah.
But if you have an opinion, right, that doesn't agree with other people's, you're automatically a bitch.
And if you're not falling in line,
and you're not letting people push you around.
If you're not falling in line to the stereotype or the box that we're supposed to fit into, and this is what Mindy was saying, she's single, she had kids on her own, she's successful, and everybody thinks, oh, poor Mindy, she's single. Why isn't she married? And she's like, I'm not. Why are you saying that? I'm happy. I'm really happy.
I don't fit into your box of success.
And that's what she was saying. I'm not apologizing apologizing for anything because my life is really good. Why do you think that you should feel sorry for me? So these are all things that I think we need to unpack. This is why we're doing this show, you guys, because we want to unpack all this shit that we hear all the time.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
prove these things wrong, to a certain extent. Anyway, all right. So Constance, if you're watching and you want to come and talk to us, please do. We would love it.
Yeah.
We would love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it would be honest talk. But anyway, all right, we're now going to move on because we are coming up to midterm elections. Right? Now, don't roll your eyes, people. Okay? Don't turn the channel off and don't turn this podcast off. Midterm elections, in the past, yes, they kind of were like dismissed and people didn't give a rat's ass about them. As we now know, it is becoming even more important and crucial to our democratic process and the survival of our democracy in this country when it comes to voting and using your vote and making it count, right? So the three of us decided, let's talk about the importance of voting, midterm elections, and the AAPI vote, right? Because this is something that affects each and every one of us. Even if you think it doesn't, it does. It really does, right? So we invited John Yang, who is the president of Asian Americans Advancing Justice, to come talk to us. Great guy. And we talked to him just a few days ago. So this is a pre-recorded interview. Kelly and I started the interview because Tamlyn is a busy woman. And that day she had a gig. So she hopped on a little bit later into the interview and she literally zoomed in with a shaky, like on her phone. So if her videos, I know, but her video is a little shaky. It's because she was on her phone trying to get on the call. So, but anyway, take a listen and watch this interview and then we're going to come back around on the backside. Yeah. John, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you.
Thank you for having me. Delighted to be here.
Okay, well, Kelly and I are going to blast you with a bunch of questions. But no, we just want this to be an overview and really informational in many ways, to viewers and listeners, because midterms are coming up very soon. And more than ever, it seems like these elections are super important. So can you first give us your take on what's at stake here this time around?
Sure. So a lot of things are at stake. I mean, at core, among other things, is democracy. Well, and when I say democracy, part of that involves voting and our ability to vote and having our votes count. As we know, both in the states, but even at the federal government, there's been attempts and in some cases successes in limiting our right to vote. And when I say limiting, let's be clear about what that means for Asian Americans. Because when you think about laws such as voter identification laws that require us to produce what are called exact matches between our driver's license and a secondary form of identification, we know for Asian Americans that's going to have a real effect. We also know that because of things such as what we would call the perpetual foreigner identity problem, the stereotype that our people are going to be the people that are identified by people as saying, wait, you need to be the one that shows your ID. Wait, I'm not sure I believe that this ID is accurate. We've seen that happen historically. And so those are some of the things that at a fundamental level we want to be watchful for here in the 2022 elections.
Yeah. And I think that also affects Asians a lot because sometimes their names don't match because they have one name on their driver's license that might be like an American name or something that they've, picked up. And then maybe their birth certificate might have something else, that like my grandfather did. Yeah. But so I can imagine it would affect Asians much more, especially if you have a foreign name.
That's exactly right. They both just in terms of, you're right. Like in my case, my birth certificate, I was born in Taiwan, only has my Chinese name. It wasn't until we came to the United States when I was little that I adopted the name John.
Exactly.
But even more specifically, I have an example with my wife, whose middle name is a Korean name. And this is, everyone can identify this in the Asian American community. Her middle name is the combination of two characters. In one identification, it had a hyphen. The other identification, it did not have a hyphen, and the two words were combined.
Oh.
When she went to renew her driver's license, the driver's license authorities said, no, because your social security number does not match, or social security card does not match your existing driver's license from the same state, we can't renew your license. Now think about that, right? In terms of how bizarre that was. She ended up having to get a new Social Security card just to get her driver's license.
Oh,
Wow.
man. You know, it's so funny, John, that you bring this up, because just yesterday I had to take my mother to the bank to open up a CD, and she has her Korean name, Myung Ha Lee, but she westernized it and doesn't use the Ha on her checking account just because, you know, it's more complicated. When she went to open the CD, they're like, "Where's your middle name? Wait a minute. Why does your middle name, is it on your driver's license but not on your checking account?" So we just went through this. So something as simple as that could deter someone to go and vote or even register, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And think about that also in the context of language proficiency, right? Because we know that for our Asian American community, about a third of our community is not considered English proficient. So you go to the registrar to register to vote. You're presented with this, well, you don't have exact matching IDs, and your English is not that good. And so the next thing you know is, well, okay, never mind, I'm not going to bother.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the real life barriers that we face when determining whether we register to vote, but then also when we get to the ballot box, if we get turned away or we get asked whether we will able to actually vote.
Right, right. Well, it seems that the newer generation, we're not going to have people born here in the United States are not going to have as many problems with names and things like that, and English, of course. And it seems the newer generation might be more apt to get out and vote, but the older generation still has that, hesitancy and feeling like maybe they should just keep their heads down and work hard and not get involved in politics, because maybe wherever they came from, that might not have been a safe place to be, right? To at the voting box or to be active in politics, because you could get killed that way. So have you seen a big improvement in voting lately?
Well, certainly over the last 20 years, the Asian American registration rates have more than doubled. And likewise, our voting rate has just about doubled. So in that sense, we're making progress. It's not just in numbers, but in percentages of people that are registered to vote, people that are actually voting. That said, we still do have work to do, because as compared to the white population or the African American population, we still lag behind significantly in terms of double-digit percentages with respect to registration rates and actual voting rates. So we know that there's work to be done. You're right, there are some generational issues, some of which, again, I think is overlaid with the language difficulty. And Kelly, you hit it right on the head. Many of the countries that we come from, so to speak, where our parents were born, do not have vital democracies. The notion of democracy is literally foreign to them. Right. And now, in this day and age also, as we are seeing, unfortunately, the insurrection on January 6th, I think for some of our older generation, and I've heard accounts of this, where they are starting to doubt whether they should be voting again. And so there is work to be done to make sure that people understand that the importance of voting, the difference that it can make, because we know it does make a difference.
Well,
Right.
let's then talk about what is currently happening. I mean, the last couple of years, obviously, for the AAPI community have been very tough, right? Anti-Asian hate, we all know about that, at least within the AAPI community. It's a little disheartening when you see these new surveys that keep coming out saying that still most Americans are unaware or don't know about it, or they think it's gone away. So is that something that is still at front and center when it comes to the AAPI community and their voting habits? Is that making a difference, or are the economic woes and all of these other issues, the fear of democracy, crumbling? Are those issues trumping any sort of AAPI related, anti-Asian hate related issues?
Yeah, on one level, Asian American issues are similar to the issues of all Americans. So when we do our voter survey along with APIA data, API data and APIA vote, what always tops of the list is economy. What tops of the list is healthcare.
Right.
So in that sense, it's similar to all Americans. But what we saw in the most recent survey that we did this year was that anti-Asian hate did rank up there in the top 5 for one of the first times that we could remember. So that does register. Again, how that shows up in the ballot box is interesting. And obviously, this election is going to be different because there will be a lot more in-person voting. Asian Americans in the 2020 election preferred by far mail-in ballots, preferred by far early voting where they could. And part of that was perhaps the safety. Part of that was it gave them the time to translate materials if they needed to. So the open question this year is whether those increased turnout rates that we saw in 2020 will continue in 2022.
Yeah. You know, John, you bring up a really interesting issue, which is the early voting, mail-in voting. We do know that there's been a push to eliminate those options across the country in certain areas with the intention of limiting who can vote, right? So from your perspective at Advancing Justice, what are you seeing and what can be done to combat this? Because this is happening on top of redistricting, of course. That's a whole nother issue, right?
That's exactly right. And so we are actually litigating both in Arizona and in coordination with a number of other groups in Georgia on this very question of ballot access, right?
Okay.
And on which includes voter ID, which includes early voting, depending on which jurisdiction, which state you're in. And it's a real concern. I think what people can do, number one, is we still have to exercise our right to vote, whatever that form takes. Yes, it's going to be harder. Yes, in certain cases, you may have to stand in line longer or travel further. But if we don't exercise that right, it gets lost and even further diluted. So it's, in that sense, it's a bit of hard news, if you will, because the playing field is unequal at times. But that's how we demand change, right? And if you are voting, and when I say voting, I want to emphasize it should be not just at the federal level for your senators, your members of Congress,
right.
But especially your state officials, whether it's governor or secretary of state. You know, the secretary of state in many states controls the voting process, and we've seen much more news about that.
Yeah.
And so those are aspects that we should be paying attention to as well.
I mean, what would happen to people like myself who are always traveling and like I always have to mail in a ballot because I never know if I'm even going to be around.
Yep.
And oftentimes I'm in another city, you know, shooting or whatever, not even in the country. How they would eliminate ballots for that too? For people?
Well, yeah. In your case, Kelly, it's probably a little bit easier, and it's because, and let's be honest about it, all of us come from a position of privilege, if you will, right? And so, you know, they will certainly preserve the right of people to mail in ballots, whether you are from the military, whether it is job related, or where sort of you have what they would deem to be a legitimate excuse. So probably all of us would fall into that category. But for people that just have 9-to-5 jobs that couldn't wait in line, that oftentimes is not considered a legitimate excuse, even though we all know that that's not quite fair. I mean, that's classist, among other things, right?
Right.
So on one hand, for you, probably it would not have much impact, although the concern there is you need to be aware of what the laws are so you get your ballot in on time.
Right.
You know, we've seen a lot of changes over these last couple of years even. And so the concern is if we're not up to date on what those laws are, you might miss your opportunity.
And that's the problem. That's the problem. They keep changing the laws depending on what state you're in, depending on what district you're in. And so that causes that confusion. And again, my fear is always, well, then that's, you know, the deterrent, enough of a deterrent for some people to say, screw it, I'm not going to vote.
Well, and I don't mean to be alarmist about this, but you're absolutely right. If you think about the history of voting, from literacy laws to tax laws, you know, in terms of who has the right to vote, the laws have always changed to benefit certain classes and disenfranchise other classes. Yep. And here again, that's what we see is, you know, you are eliminating polling places that happen to be polling places where minorities live or where people without economic means live, right? And so that's the danger. And these laws are getting changed in such a way that people don't have notice. They're being changed so people that don't speak English don't have notice, right? And so even if we want to, it's on all of us to educate our sisters and brothers about what these laws are.
I'm curious then what each of us can do. I mean, obviously, this is why we're doing the show. We're trying to inform, we're trying to educate. But is that enough? You know, are these voices being heard? And again, you say language barriers, you know, just access. You know, not everyone has a smartphone. Not everyone, you know, goes on the internet and gets informed, right? So these are all barriers that especially the AAPI community deals with, because it's not just one language, right?
Right.
You know, with the Hispanic community, it's at least a language similarity that they can communicate. We have multiple languages, right? So that is a huge barrier as well.
So yeah, we have to get a lot of the information out in every language and make sure that you know, people who are listening to their news outlets in their language get the same and correct information.
Yep. Right. That's right. And this is where, again, you know, people of our generation, so to speak, have perhaps a special obligation to help, whether it's our IEs, our 9Is, so to speak, right, to get that information out. My organization, we have an 866 line. It's 866 API vote that we run with API vote. That's in multiple languages. So if you have questions about, even if you have basic questions about where to vote, you call that line, then you will be able to get answers on where to vote, what materials you might need, and the like. So that's one place. We try to put out flyers in different languages about all of these different requirements and what your rights are as a voter. You know, knowing even that you are allowed to bring a translator with you to the ballot box. You know, that's something that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah,
they're allowed to go in the box with you.
Go in the box with you. That person does not even have to be a citizen, does not have to be a relative. The only requirements are they can't be a union official, they can't be your employer. There might be one other category like that, but by and large, you're allowed to bring what's called an assister of your choice, right? And
I didn't know that. I had no idea you could do that. Huh?
Yes, and people even it doesn't. I'm pretty sure it doesn't even have to be an adult. So you can have your child, like under 18, that can come with you. And frankly, that's obviously a great experience for the kid too.
Yeah.
Right. But there are a lot of people, a lot of immigrants who rely on their children, right, for translation and doing all of that stuff for them.
For sure.
So yeah,
Right.
I you know, great idea.
Right.
John, you know, not to bring this conversation down, but because of everything that's been happening, again, we keep on hearing about more murders of Asian Americans, two of which just happened here in LA in a matter of days, actually, or maybe 2 weeks. Are people just getting to the point of such exhaustion and frustration and anger where they're just, and I will admit, I'm saying this because I'm admitting this to myself. Sometimes I'm like, oh, to hell with all of this. I just don't give a bleep about this anymore. I just don't, because it just is it's so overwhelming and so negative at times that you're like, why am I fighting anymore? Why? I don't care about this anymore. Do you feel that? Do you hear that? And how do you combat that?
Yeah, I definitely hear that. Even me and my staff feel that. But that's also why we have to care even more. And it is a special burden for us. It is a burden that we should carry.
Look at who's just joined us.
Wonderful.
I'm so sorry.
No,
Thank you.
please,
Hi,
Tamlyn.
John.
Hi, Tamlyn.
Hey, Kelly. Hey, Kelly.
Hi.
Hey, May.
Hey,
Hi,
hey.
hi. I'm sorry for the delay, but I had some work to do.
You
And
had
it's like,
you're a working girl just like we all are, so no problem. No,
Thank you.
John, we're having a nice conversation. We're just talking about, I just asked John about the frustration that we all have about what's been going on, to the point where some of us just want to just throw in the towel and just be like, oh, screw this. I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to fight anymore. It's just not worth it. And so John was just saying he too and his staff feel that way on occasion, but please keep going.
But the other thing I would say is I also see a lot of people, especially, again, the younger generation that are saying, yeah, this is why we absolutely have to fight. And if you will, doubling down on all of this, right? Mm-hmm. And finding the right alliances. Because again, as we talk about anti-Asian hate, we can't forget that during these last couple of years is when we had the murder of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and so many more African Americans. We've had Uvalde, we've had Buffalo. We've just had so much trauma in all of our collective communities that we have to fight, right? We have to fight. And I think that brings us through some of these hard times. Yeah, we grieve together, but then after we grieve together, we turn around the next day and we exercise our power together.
Are we seeing, I know that there are a lot more Asian American candidates running for office, which is a great thing. I mean, we're really underrepresented still in politics, but we're seeing that increase, right? What do you have numbers? Do you have an idea of what's going on, across the country in terms of that representation?
Sure. We're certainly at an all-time high right now in terms of members of Congress. And I don't have the exact numbers for people running for Congress or in the state legislatures, just because, there are also third-party candidates and sort of, in terms of what is considered a competitive race and what gets tracked is hard. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But what is interesting is I am seeing quite an increase in people, especially at the local level, that are getting involved. I'm hearing about school boards, hearing about like state senate, state house. And it is in not just the urban areas that we typically think of as being Asian American. It is places like Iowa or places like Pacific Islanders in Arkansas. So in that sense, again, I think there is new energy that is out there that is encouraging, absolutely encouraging.
Tamlyn, you wanna jump in here with something?
Yeah, thank you for letting me blab. And it can go ad infinitum, but just be sure to interject, because I just want to resound loudly what John was saying earlier, is that in times of when we're low on stamina, low on energy, low on that kind of direction as to where we're going to next. In terms of specifically Stop AAPI Hate, it's to look alongside us. It's like, to look alongside our communities who are going through their own specific community issues and say, how can we help? What can I do to help? What can we do to help to be able to receive the help from others? It's for us to take that initiative to say, I don't know exactly what I can do, but I want to help. So tell me, direct me, help me help you. And it's that looking alongside each other. It's continually learning and relearning and telling and retelling the stories of George Floyd, of Ahmaud Arbery, of Breonna Taylor, of the indigenous communities in North America I just came back from Canada yesterday, I can't remember. So knowing that they were celebrating their Thanksgiving on our Indigenous Persons Day, which is the second anniversary of it, which is formerly known as Columbus Day. But on September 30th, Canada also recognizes Truth and Reconciliation Day. It's about recognizing the truth of what the government of Canada has done historically, but not to assign blame and not to say, it's because of all the colonization, which is it's not directly specifically targeting a group of persons, but it's just the system. It is naming the system that is to blame. But to recognize that the people, the personal costs are still ongoing. And that's the spirit of what Truth and Reconciliation is to be able to unearth the stories, again, to tell the stories and to share them, that this is something that we all share.
Yeah. That's so progressive. Gosh.
For us, and Kelly and I get to go to Canada and go, what are you guys celebrating? Why do we have a day off? It's like, they don't celebrate American Thanksgiving unless there's enough Americans on set. But to recognize that just above the border are stories that we come to know being North Americans, but also be mindful of what's going south of the border as well. To look at those persons who, and John, you must know what's going on with Los Angeles City Council about, the whole colorism issue. It's about people not looking like another person and saying, oh, those kind of people. And it's like, you share a heritage, you share a culture. It's like, and why are you, blowing, poo-poo like that? I don't want
Yeah.
to swear yet,
Here's-
May.
Yeah, we
So,
can.
so
my question, though.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it seems as though when it comes to African American issues, everybody jumps on board.
Yeah.
I don't always feel like when it comes to Asian issues, like Asian people being attacked, that we are getting any kind of support from allies, that are not in our community.
That's a great point to raise.
Maybe it's a lack of awareness.
Yeah. No, John,
or
you know what, John, can you address
that
this?
people don't care.
Yeah, address this, John, from advancing justice point of view, because you guys, that's your job to raise awareness, right? But I'm sure it's a frustrating exercise for you at times when you see the media, especially, just pass over these stories over and over and over again, where we're not being heard or seen.
It is frustrating. It is frustrating. On one level, I do think our allies are trying to help us. Thinking back for me personally, after Atlanta, the number of phone calls I got from the head of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the head of the National Urban League, ADL, Unidos, was heartwarming. And when we got on a Zoom call with all of them within a few days, I have to say, when I looked at their faces, I saw friends, I saw people that were grieving with me, but also saw communities that suffered the same hurt.
Yep.
Whether it was El Paso, Tree of Life Synagogue, Pulse nightclub.
Right.
And so there was definitely a feeling of community, a tragic community, but definitely a feeling of community. Now, how that bubbles into the media becomes harder, right?
Yeah.
And certainly the media has passed over our stories a little too easily. And there is work that we all need to do. And you all know this even better than I do, how hard that is. Part of it is numbers. I will give some grace that because our numbers are relatively small, that's part of it.
Yeah.
Part of it is still the model minority myth, right? Is that, well, you guys can't have any issues. You guys have always been the so-called overachievers. So that anytime we do have issues, it's not taken as seriously, right? And part of it is our own community. We have to speak with a more unified voice, because our communities, let's face it, have only come together fairly recently. I mean, if you think about it, we weren't really a pan-Asian community until Vincent Chin in some ways. I mean, certainly there was the Asian Pacific American movement of the late 60s, early 70s. But as a political force, it really wasn't until the 80s that you really saw us coming together. So I want us to give ourselves a little bit of grace as well, recognizing that we're a young community.
Yeah. John, curious about some of the rhetoric that's been coming out of late, especially against the Asian community, against China, continuing about the virus, but then, of course, like economic domination and all of that, and even personal attacks against Mitch McConnell's wife, Elaine Chao, by another politician. It seems like it is open season in terms of that rhetoric, even from leadership, and we kind of know where that sort of stems from. But are you seeing that as a growingly dangerous element in politics where, the scapegoating continues and now this language and rhetoric is so fiery and open and hostile and it's totally accepted?
It's a huge threat. Look, sometimes I say Vincent Chin was ultimately killed because of a trade war that we had with the Japanese government over automobiles. Balbir Sodi was killed because of a foreign terrorist attack on U.S. soil. Those were legitimate geopolitical issues for us, just like the Chinese government is a legitimate geopolitical issue. The Chinese government system and what they do to Uyghurs in Xinjiang or democracy in Hong Kong, we need to call that out, right? But when you use rhetoric such as the Chinese are our enemy, that's when it crosses the line. That's when you end up putting a target on all of our backs. And we just need to be more smart about that. And I think some politicians get it, but unfortunately not enough do. It's just as simple as saying the Chinese government policies are doing X, Y, and Z. You know,
Exactly.
they are not for human rights. You know, just recognizing that's a government system. It's a political tension that we have, not a cultural one. You know?
Well, I know, John, you're limited on time, but I want Kelly and Tamlyn, if you guys have any other points or questions for him before we wrap this up, it'd be great.
What exactly do we need to do in the next 26 days, John, in order to coalesce what it means to be Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander American in terms of the midterms? Because I think we're all feeling the tension rising and the reins being tightened, because we need to run our horse and to make sure that issues that affect us as a community come first and foremost. But also, again, it's what we were just saying about using it as the distinction between what it is to mean when we address Chinese government or whatever foreign government we're steeling ourselves against, versus the culture wars. Because to be Chinese American, to be Asian American, always gets mixed up in that gray area when we just say Asian issues. It's a Chinese issue. It's a Japanese issue. What do we need to do? Do we need to be more noisy? Do we need to be more strategic? And how can we help others in terms of progressing our agenda that really means to benefit us all?
Yeah, and I do think we need to be more noisy. And all of that is, I always think of it also in terms of small steps. It's as simple as if you hear someone saying something along the lines of the Chinese are an enemy, stop, regardless of what context it's in. Just stop and say, hey, you know, I know you don't mean it that way. Please use this terminology, right?
Yeah.
And that will go a long way. You know, when people engage in sort of stereotyping of any sort, just making that quote unquote small effort.
Yeah.
That makes a difference. And then asking our community, right, reaching out and making sure that they're participating in the process. You know, voting, literally voting, and thinking about what their values are, sort of in going to the ballot box. And that it has to be more than just sort of our own isolated silo. I know that that's harder work at times. But I think if each of us can reach out to 5 people we maybe normally don't reach out to, right, and have this sort of conversation, then collectively we actually make a pretty big difference.
Yep, absolutely. Well, John, thank you so much for your time. And we appreciate you informing and educating all of us and getting the word out. And thank you for the work that you and Advancing Justice do. It's tireless. Sometimes you're like unsung heroes. You don't get a lot of credit, but we know you're doing it because you care about the mission and the purpose. So we all appreciate it so much.
Well, thank you all, and thank you all for the platform you're offering, because sort of your platforms also really help our community to be loud, to be noticed, and to make a difference.
Yeah, amen.
Thank you, John. Thank you for being in all the Zoom rooms that each of us have been in with you. And for the next one, you're probably going to be into right after this. But thank you so very much. And if there's anything I think I could speak for Kelly and for May, if there's anything that we can do for Asian Americans Advancing Justice, just, you know, we're a hop, skip, and a jumping away.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
I just want to say thank you to John Yang of Asian Americans Advancing Justice National, and for the work that he and his colleagues have done, not only during this time period of anti-Asian hate and voting rights, but just the idea that we are, as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders, have a voice, and that we should exercise it. Yeah. And that if we are brave enough to be loud with it, to encourage others to use their voice, to go out there and vote, because it is a sense of accountability to be able to say, this is what I believe in, this is who I believe in, I'm going to place my sticker, my check mark, pull the lever for that person who is going to represent me in my city, in my district, in my state, in my country, and that we have a say. It's something that's a privilege that so many have fought for. And just look at the fact that people are trying to make it more difficult when it should be easy.
Exactly.
And know that it's something that's super important for each and every one of us to do.
And this is what I always say to people. It's just like, you know, if you're going to complain about things not working right, or your rights, being infringed
Right.
upon, or anti-Asian hate, whatever the
Mm-hmm.
issue might be, but then you're not going to go out and vote. Well, then that's your problem, right?
Right.
We're given an opportunity to have our say and put people in office who are going to fight for us. But if you're not willing to make that effort, that other people die to do in other countries, right? They literally die to try to cast a vote.
Right.
That's the least we can do, right?
Yeah, that really bothers me when people are like, "Oh, I don't vote because none of it makes a difference."
Right.
Especially in these smaller counties,
Right.
In these smaller little elections, sometimes the difference of 1 or 2 votes actually makes the difference because
Slim margins.
so few people go out and vote in these like midterms, right? In these smaller elections. So all you need is a couple of votes sometimes to just turn the tide. And so it does matter. As we saw it in even the last presidential election, right? Different counties, it came down to single votes.
Very slim margins, and sometimes it was the AAPI vote that made a difference in certain elections.
Yes.
So,
and I just want to shout out to the work that Kelly had produced a PSA about what was called least likely to vote, and it was a number of years ago, but it's still
It
pertinent.
was 2004.
Whoever they are, they're only 34%.
So they're the least likely. We have to find out who. Who are they?
You never told her.
We are Asian Pacific Islander Americans.
From 18 to 25
Are the least likely to vote.
You can change that. Choose or lose.
So in 2004, the reason why we did this PSA, Cause, who is a great organization to try to get, the Asian vote out, they pointed out to me that Asian Americans were the least likely of any race, any minority to get out and vote. And I thought that was shocking to me, right? In 2004, that was shocking to me because I thought, oh, Asians are always doing the right thing, that of course we're going to get out and vote. But apparently that was not the case. And so we had to do this PSA to encourage, especially young people to get out to vote. And it was part of the Choose or Lose campaign on MTV, and it won all kinds of awards. And then the year after, in 2008, I understood that that a lot more Asians did come out to vote, and that at that point, at 2008, we were no longer the least likely.
Right.
Yep, absolutely. I agree with everything that was said just now. So one last thing, we're trying to shove so much into this particular episode. It's crazy. So one last thing I'd like to end on, which is October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Why do we bring this up? Because the issue is that, obviously this is a concern amongst all women. My mother is a breast cancer survivor.
Mine too.
So because Asians, there is this myth and misinformation about Asians not having a high rate of breast cancer, and that's not true. And in fact, Asians tend to have denser breast tissue, so it's much harder to detect breast cancer with a mammogram. And so really Asian women need to be aware of this and get their mammograms and get their checkups, whatever schedule you're supposed to be on for your age bracket, and do it, because you just don't know, and so this is something that we really want to,
don't be scared.
Don't be scared.
Don't be
I mean,
scared.
yeah,
It's your health.
it's uncomfortable, because your boob is completely mashed, with the mammogram. But then there's also the sonograms that also can detect other, sort of abnormalities. Unfortunately, a lot of insurance, which is bullshit. This is bullshit. There should be legislation about this. Sonograms aren't often covered by insurance.
Right. Yes.
Right? That's just fucking bullshit.
Right.
This is where I'm going to swear. It's
a
fucking bullshit.
point of view.
That's a whole other episode.
Yeah, that's a whole other episode.
Well, we're going to get into women's health for sure on this show, but yes. So October, Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Let's take care of ourselves and each other, and get that word out. So
it's the end of. I think it's the end of Hispanic Heritage Month as well, but it's still Filipino Heritage Month.
I know.
As well,
October is jam packed, but and it's Halloween. So and it's my dog Eggy's
football season. season,
15th
right?
birthday.
Baseball
and
season.
so-
Oh my God, the Dodgers. You know.
Oh, I know.
Everything
I
else.
know. They're out. They're out. Anyway.
Right.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Enough. I'm like exhausted from this episode, but it was great. We covered a lot of ground, ladies.
Yes, we did. We
Absolutely.
did.
So would love to hear from everyone, but this is kind of something we're working on. And like we said, a title of the show is coming soon.
Coming soon. Coming soon.
Okay.
Maybe
All
that's
right.
the title of our
Coming soon. All right, it will. Next time we do this, we will have a title. We promise. Okay. But
Okay.
it was so great to see you, ladies. Even though it was this way, at some point we're going to be doing these together. We'll figure that out.
Right. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
barefoot.
Okay.
For
All
sure.
right.
Careful, for sure. It'll be fun.
We will see
All
each
right.
other soon. Okay. Bye everyone.
Bye.